Black mothers who had earlier raised an entire generation of white children before as housekeepers for whites walked away, deserting their own children when given the chance, and turned their children over to the white-controlled, integrated, co-educational schools to be taught that the white man is their slave master. Black mothers forced their sons to bow to the image of a white god, automatically making them inferior to the white man.
I'll be missing you, missing you.
Teachers proudly boasted to their black students that I got mine, you got yours to get, while pouring all their money into the church and designer clothes, chasing after the preacher. No loud protest rose up among black mothers saying, "Stop drafting my sons." Husbands and fathers to die in a white capitalist war to kill innocent men, women, and children halfway around the world. When black kids grew up lost, uneducated, unemployed, drug addicts because mama was spending all her money in church or on some pimping asshole, their only reason was, you gotta have a man around. Black mothers proudly sell their athletic sons to white colleges and pro teams for money because the devil's motto is, everybody has a price. Kids like LeBron James and Kobe Bryant are paraded around as role models, so other young black kids will waste their time playing kid games instead of learning to run a business or a skill to earn a living for the families. It was the black woman who put the final nail in the black family's coffin. The black woman's worship of white society led to the Hollywood hiring of a bunch of homosexual drug addicts, parading them across the screen as being stars. Punks like the Simmons families, the Waynes, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, all of them saying, "I'll do anything you want if you accept me as white too." Richard Pryor used to brag about doing a $1,000 line of cocaine. And then you have punks like Lil Wayne, LL Cool J, Ice-T, and Ice Cube. I really want to list them all running around holding their crotches, talking about how tough they are, 'cause they work for the white man who gave them guns, money, drugs, and bees. On the other side are the black whores, like Beyonce and Rihanna, shaking their naked, stinky asses all across the stage in front of young 10 to 14-year-old adolescent boys singing, "If you want it, put a ring on it." Teenage boys grow up having absolutely no respect for black women. Hollywood takes great pains to show the so-called modern-day black entertainers as the most negative, foul-mouthed, Jesus-loving role models any kid can admire. But black women still love Denzel Washington like he is a real man, and the whole Beyonce is invited to the White House by the coconut the U.S. calls president. No one notices the disappearing social programs or the rapidly decaying black neighborhoods.
Let's see.
That is the world my father grew up in. He never knew he was the victim of a war aimed at destroying him and his family. As one of the 85% of black kids who cannot afford college, my father fell into the trap laid out for him by the white capitalist elite, thrown into an integrated school system that focused on sex, drugs, and partying and violence, and surrounded Hollywood and television. He was hooked by the homosexual black stars bragging about partying, hoes, and drugs, just like it was planned in 1950, after killing a generation of true black fathers and heroes to leave the black families fatherless and without role models. My father's attitude of being an ex-slaves of whites stops blacks from ever wanting to compete against the white corporation. Their only desire is to get out of the black community as fast as they can.
I'll be missing you, missing you.
My dad did not understand that the real evil in drug addiction and alcoholism is that they create a physical and emotional dependence that only has one purpose, and that is complete and total destruction of the black family. Without a family, each person becomes a lonely, jobless slave with no foundation, no motivation, and no future. 40s or the cheap fortified beers, for example, only sold in black neighborhoods because they cause the drinker to become physically violent. Every second of a drug addict's or alcoholic's life is devoted to getting high or drunk, making them the perfect slave. In America's gang-filled, bully-controlled, violent streets, young boys and girls quickly turn to alcohol and drugs for the fake carriage you get when drunk or high. Once hooked, nothing else in the world matters. When we arrived in Africa, my grandfather was glad to see my dad because he needed help to set up a small business. In the beginning, he did not know anyone to run a business or handle money, so he wanted a family member or friend from the U.S. But he discovered that my father's disease completely controlled his mind, and my father would spend everything he got on drugs, cigarettes, and alcohol. He would not pay the hired help or buy supplies, food, or anything else while threatening everyone, telling them he was a gangster. After a few failed attempts at giving my father the responsibility of being in charge of his own money and business, my grandfather broke both hips and was forced back to the U.S. for surgery. After a few years of moving around, we moved into a city called Sacramento, where my father truly began to respect the strength of the Africans. He came to appreciate their intelligence, humility, and courage, but most important of all, he discovered that life began here in Africa. He saw honest, gentle people who did not steal or do drugs. He realized that the struggle of life against all the negative forces around you is the only thing that mattered, and that you can only depend on your own family because no one else in the world is obligated to care for you but you. He learned the truth about humanity, and he finally faced the reality that he would be born again. Read what my father learned.
Michael read a book called The Seven Daughters of Eve by Brian Sykes, a professor of genetics at the Institute of Molecular Medicine at Oxford University. He discovered when he first read that book that everyone agreed that modern Homo sapiens, the species to which we all belong, originated in Africa. In Sykes' book, Michael found out he was more than flesh and blood. He came from his mother's genes, which was made of pure energy that was passed into him. So, Mike became a force of energy that makes his flesh and blood body work. Energy that has been passed down into him from his mother Harriet, and she got it from the first African queen who passed it down through mankind. He also discovered that, incredible as it may seem, we can tell from genetic reconstruction that the settlements of the rest of the world involved only one of the 13 original African clans. It is theoretically possible from the mitochondrial DNA evidence that only one modern human female, one woman, left Africa, and that from this one woman, all of us in the rest of the world can claim direct maternal descent. That knowledge, that reality, sent Michael on a quest to discover what everyone else had to say. And in looking around, he found out that everyone agreed that the recent out-of-Africa theory is the most widely accepted model describing the geographic origin and early migration of anatomically modern human beings. The first reality is that the oldest fossils found are those of an African female, depicted here by a white man who throws hair on her to make her look like an ape, because the white boy is the great white ape himself. But this is not true. This woman was a modern human being with smooth skin as an African. A real eye-opener came when Mike read the Quran, chapter 15, because 3 billion people on the planet read the book. It says, "And surely we created man of clay that talks, of black mud fashioned in the shape, and the jinn we created before of intensely hot fire. And when thy Lord said to the angels, I am going to create a mortal of clay that talks, of black mud fashioned in the shape. So when I have made him complete and breathed into him of my spirit, fall down and be obedient to him." And when we said to the angels, be submissive to Adam, they submitted, except Iblis the devil, who said, shall I submit to him whom thou hast created of dust? The devil says, this is he whom thou hast honored above me. If thou respite me to the day of resurrection, I will certainly cause his progeny to perish, except a few. Mike had to check more, and he looked in the other Qurans, and they all verified the fact that black mud that talks was the first. Dark modeling clay, dark mud from black mud. Sounding clay out of dark, that is capable of making sounds. These truths became a reality from the Bible. In the very beginning of the Bible, Michael read, then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over everything. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. Using God's DNA program. Well, who is this man that God used his DNA to create and placed over and told to rule everything on earth? When God created mankind, he made them in the likeness of God. He created them male and female and blessed them, and he named them mankind when they were created. When Adam, once again, Adam, as it says in the Quran, had lived 130 years, he had a son in his own image, in his own likeness, and he named him Seth, so that Adam passed his DNA program, the one that he got from God, into his son. Michael checked even further, and there in Revelations, at the very beginning, chapter 1, grace and peace to you from him who is, and who was, and who is to come, and from the 7 spirits before his throne, and from Jesus Christ, who is the faithful witness, the firstborn from the dead, and the ruler of the kings of the earth. Jesus is not him who is, who was, and who is to come. Otherwise it would not say, and from Jesus. So who is it who is, who was, and who is to come? Luke, 3rd chapter, 38th verse. The genealogy of Jesus in the end states, the son of Seth, the son of Adam, the son of God. Nowhere in the Bible does Jesus call himself the Son of God. He only refers to himself as the Son of Man.
King One Entertainment.
Two Tag 18.
Yeah, right.
You know, we're back again.
We're doing it again.
Yeah, you know.